Hi everyone, it's Nicole Spohr and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to create some easy boy cards using new products from the Pretty Pink Posh June 2022 release. I mentioned this in my video last week where I shared a dinosaur card and envelope that Paulina has some super amazing products for us, just inspired by the lack of really great boy products in the industry and inspired by her just adorable son. So I love this. I am going to create 4 cards today. All of them are going to have some sort of stenciled background. So I'm starting with our road building background stencils. These are called the Layered Roads. I am using Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated inks. The first ink color I'm using here is called, I believe I'm using flannel. I'm using flannel for the base of my roads. I am using the Tonic Studios Magnetic Matte. And what is awesome about these layered roads is you can see that you just build and each stencil kind of covers up the previous area. So for the first background, we're going to create like grassy areas between the roads using green inks. I'll be using Sprout and Fairway inks to fill in those areas. And I am going to do a couple shades of green for a little bit more interest. And I really love this Tonic magnetic system. It makes it so you don't have to use things like pixie spray that's can be messy. I love pixie spray. I still use pixie spray, especially for very, very detailed stencils, which you'll see in videos. I talk about that. But for this, I just really felt like this would work the easiest, and it did. Now I'm going to go in with the Fairway ink after I've applied the Sprout ink, and we're just going to add some shading. Now, something really interesting about these inks is when they go on, it may look a little blotchy in areas, but generally, especially if you use a pretty, I want to say light hand, and aren't having any harsh lines or areas on your card, as the ink dries, as it's absorbed into the cardstock, it tends to smooth out. You will notice in the finished cards that they're very smooth and really, really beautiful. So don't be afraid when you first take the stencil off and you think, oh my goodness, this does not look the way I want it to. It is going to be fine. I did start with 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch panels of smooth white cardstock, and I will be trimming them down to 4 by 5 1/4. I like to start with a little bit bigger, and it gives me an idea of how I want to finish the design. And that way, if I choose to leave it big, I can. The way I laid out my stencils today really didn't allow for that, I guess I want to say. Probably if I'd started with that stencil first, I would have done a little bit better, but that's okay. I actually like it framed up with that white border all the way around the best. And then there's the stencil where you can add the lines in the road. And I did this with the charcoal ink. And there's our first background. So let's set that aside to dry and work on our next background, which is going to be very similar. So we'll be using all the same stencils, but we're going to create more of a construction zone. So in the release, there's a stamp set with cars that's called Across the Miles, and then there's one with construction trucks called Construction Trucks, and they work seamlessly together. You can totally use either of these together, or you can do kind of like what I did today, and I created two different scenes. So same colors of ink. We're going to start with flannel to build our roads. We're going to take the next stencil, and this time we're going to use Latte and Cappuccino Positively Saturated inks to build the dirt background. And I love this. Just really fun, unique products. I know I've heard from so many of you who the release went live last week. So I've heard from a lot of you who said, I have grandsons, or I'm a boy mom, and I love hearing that from everyone. These products work for anybody, but I just especially love that they're going to work for maybe little guys. I know several of the cards I've made, I have a younger nephew that would like some of these cards. So I know for me, I tend to find it easier to create the girly, floral type of cards. You know what I mean? And so these products make it very easy to create some amazing designs. And I think Pretty Pink Posh has been knocking it out of the park with their layered stencils anyway. They are amazing. They're easy to use. You get fantastic results. I know so many of you love stenciling because it allows you to add, all of these great colored designs without actually having to color with markers. So if coloring with markers is not your jam, I highly recommend the layering stencils. And then of course, let's just add in our lines for our roads. Now, I do want to tell you, this background will smooth out as well. So you may have noticed in the finished cards at the beginning of the video, and you'll see them again here at the end, how smooth they look. Just be patient with the ink. It will smooth out. So let's create a couple of backgrounds now with the layered vehicles. And this is going to be the layered construction trucks and the layered cars. For the construction trucks, I'm going to use Sunbeam and Citrine inks from Simon Says Stamp, and I'm using the brand new small detail brushes. These are awesome if you've got a stencil that has a lot of small areas to add color to, and that makes it super easy to be able to change colors. And you'll notice that more, this set not quite so much because it's a lot of yellow, but you're gonna notice this a ton when we move on to like the cars video, and even just different areas on this particular set. Much like I talked about in the dinosaur video, you don't have to use these stencils exactly the way they are. I am for the sake of this tutorial, but maybe you want to create some coordinating envelopes. When I actually mail these, I didn't create them today. Darn it, I should have. You can take one element, one truck, one car from either of these, and you can stencil that on your envelope, kind of to frame up like the address or whatever. Wouldn't that be darling? You don't have to do the entire background. And I think that's probably one of my favorite things about these layering stencils. That goes for your cards as well. Maybe you just want to stencil and you don't want to do the stamping and coloring like you'll see me do here in a little bit. Maybe you want to just use these images to add like a single image or a row of trucks or a row of cars to your card. You can do that. It takes just a little bit more maybe thought to get it all worked out, but it's really easy. And I will link to that dinosaur video at the end of this one because I did create a coordinating envelope where I did kind of that technique I was just talking about. So here's a good example of me changing color. I am using the cappuccino ink to color in the dirt now. And then I will use some of the Earl ink to color in the wheels. I'm going to go with Earl, which is the mid-tone out of the gray, the new gray color combination from Simon Says Stamp, because we're going to use charcoal as the center of the wheels and the accent that darkens each of these. And you'll really see that here as we add our next stencil. This is stencil number 2. Let's add a little more color to our cones. I did opt to do my cones mostly in yellows, and then I'll do an orange band around them. I kind of wish I'd done all orange starting from the first stencil, but because I didn't, I just went this direction. It's fine. And here's that Earl ink. And see how amazing these small detail brushes are? They allow you to stencil right next to the area where the dirt is and not cross-contaminate. any of the other size brushes are going to do that. So if you have, let's say maybe you already have some waffle flower shader brushes or something, those would work. What I really like about these round brushes from Simon Says Stamp is that they're much like the big brushes as far as using the circular motion. However, they're tiny, so you can get into all those little, small areas so easily. I think these are going to be my favorite blending brushes. They're fantastic for detail stencils, definitely. And the Earl ink actually covers up any of the yellow on the previous stenciling very easily. Now, without re-inking my brush, I'm just kind of taking some of that leftover gray and adding a little color to the windows of the trucks. And when I remove it, oh my gosh, you can really start to see the detail. Now check out the final stencil. This is where the magic comes in. This is all of the detail for the trucks, door handles, bumpers, lights, the center of the wheels, the stripe around the construction cones, the bolts that hold all the different areas of the trucks together. You guys, I just think that's amazing. So this is the charcoal ink. I think I used charcoal for everything here. Well, maybe not. I think I used SHERBET for the stripes on the trucks and the cones. I was going to say I thought I used charcoal for everything but the stripes on the cones, but I did do the stripes on the cone, or the stripes on the trucks, with the SHERBET colored ink. So I went with an orange for a little bit of contrast. It's hard to pick a favorite background for me, but I don't know what it is about this one, but I really, really like it. And the charcoal adds just enough difference over that Earl Grey. When I remove the stencil, it is incredible. One tip I have for you with all of the detail on this stencil and where you might be wanting to change colors in between certain areas, I would highly recommend kind of working like row by row. Either start at the top or start at the bottom and work your way up or down so you don't miss anything. Oh my gosh, look at that background. Isn't that fun? Let's go ahead and create our layered cars background now. Same as before, this time though, a little less yellow. I am gonna do the buses in yellow, and then we're gonna do two different color combinations for blue vehicles. You could do all different colors. You could do each row like in different colors or rainbow colors. The possibilities are endless. So same color as before with Sunbeam and Citrine. And I did add my base color, and then I added in a little darker color in this initial stencil. And you're going to see this on all the vehicles. It just gives them a little more detail. It's a little extra step. Then my blue color combination is going to be Marine and Cadet, and my aqua color combination is Surf and Ocean. The base color for our traffic light will be Flannel. And with that, so this first stencil has the traffic lights, and then you'll stencil the lights, the different colored lights on top of that with the next two stencils. And I'll show you that as we get there. And it works really easily, and I think you'd be surprised at how great, you will be surprised at how great the colors show up against that light gray. Here is the Surf and Ocean ink colors. And this set is another one that would be really cute to line them all up in a row, maybe on a landscape style card or a slimline card, something like that. Then we'll take a little ocean and just blend in a little bit darker along the bottom edge of the car. So I'd love for you guys to tell me in the comments, what is your favorite product from the Pretty Pink Posh June 2022 release? You know, all the dinosaurs, cars, construction trucks, stencils. You guys let me know. There's some awesome dies. I'm going to show you the hello die. It's kind of a small piece, I guess, of the release, but I really love it. The font is fantastic. The size is fantastic. And I think it would work for lots of cards, obviously. Here is the next stencil. So for this one, the traffic lights have the red and green. I'm using Fairway for the green. And then the wheels and the windows. And our final stencil will have the yellow light and then all of the detail, bumpers, lights, center of the wheels, all of that good stuff. Same, using the Earl Grey ink for our wheels, so we can use charcoal for the center of the wheels and it'll show up. And using whatever leftover ink is on my brush to kind of lightly shade the windows. You could always shade the windows with a darker color of ink in the same color that you're using for your vehicle if you wanted to. There's a lot of ways to do that. This was just kind of, I kept with the same theme since that's what I started with. And you'll notice how I'm working from the top to the bottom so that I don't miss anything. I was so afraid of missing things. And then I will use some cherry ink with this small detail blending brush for the red light. And this is again another great example of how these small blending brushes work fantastic for small areas. Oh my goodness, it's looking cute. And then finally, our last stencil has all of the detail. Yellow light. We're going to use citrine for that. And then we'll use charcoal ink for the rest of the detail for the vehicles. Once I have all 4 of my backgrounds stenciled, it is time to take images from our construction trucks and our cars stamp sets and stamp them on some smooth white cardstock. I'm going to use Hero Arts Intensified Black ink, perfect for Copic coloring, on 110-pound weight Nina Solar white cardstock. And I'm going to color in the images that I'll be using for the 2 background, the layered roads scenes. We have our construction scene and our car scene. I am going to color in my images for those before die cutting them. As always, the Copic markers I've used to color in my images are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube, as well as over on my blog. Now, these cards are part of an Instagram hop where Pretty Pink Posh is giving away some great prizes, so please be sure to visit Instagram. I will have my Instagram handle in this post as well. Keeping with the theme of the construction trucks, I am coloring these in with yellow markers. I picked 3 of the trucks, the traffic cone, and some dirt from the construction trucks stamp set. I did end up stamping 2 additional cones that I'm going to use on my finished card. I'm laying down my darkest color, kind of blending out with my midtone, and then going over the entire thing with my lightest color. So Y38, Y19, and Y08. And while I'm coloring that color, I'm going to go ahead and do the school bus for my other scene card. I really tried to streamline the process as much as possible with all the stenciling of the backgrounds, all the coloring, stamping of sentiments on our 2 road backgrounds, and then assembly. Because our construction trucks layered background and our cars background are busy, we're going to keep the sentiments fairly simple, but that's going to be the only additional element to those cards. For the dirt, I'm using E55 and 57. I completely forgot the dirt in the truck, so I'm going to have to go back and get that. And then we're going to use some grays here for the wheels, cool grays, and a really light cool gray for the center. For the windows, I'm going to use some light blue colors to give the illusion of glass. Since I'm coloring in these, I can be a little more choosy there than the stenciling. And we'll even finish the windows with a layer of crystal lacquer. You can use glossy accents, anything like that. So B00 and B01. And I'm going in kind of at a diagonal on all the windows and not doing super precise coloring or blending, I guess I should say, but just more of a little flicking or feathering motion. Here I realized I forgot my dirt, so we'll color that in real quick. I go back with E57 and add a little dot detail to give it a little more texture. Use our cool grays again for all of the accents for the rest of our trucks. And then finally finishing with the darkest color here for wheels. A lot like this stenciling where I started with a lighter gray color and then added the darker. Little white pin detail. I always think maybe kind of helps dress up the images a bit, gives some little highlights, added some little lines in the windows, all kinds of good stuff here. Then we're going to color in our remaining vehicles and our traffic light and our traffic cones. We'll do our wheels for the bus. When I just said that, Wheels on the Bus Go Round and Round started playing in my head. Haven't sang that in a while. I'm using Cool Gray 00 for the insides of the wheels, so even if I don't do super precise coloring and a little bit of the darker gray gets in them, I like that there's so much colorless blender in the Cool Gray 00 that it kind of pushes that ink out. I like the look of it. Here's our traffic light. And then we're going to do a blue car and a red truck. Traffic cone is going to be orange. And like I mentioned, I did end up stamping and coloring 2 more of these for my finished card. I'm using our 46, 27, and 24 for my truck. However, my R24 needed refilled, and I found that it wasn't coloring great. And so I added a lot more R27 to the finished truck design. You can see here, it's very empty. I need to refill it. Quite a bit of coloring, but worth it. It's going to build the cutest scene cards. 2 of the cards today are scene cards and 2 are more of all over background prints. And the blue for the insides of the windows again. Let's go ahead and do the other one while I have those markers out. And then we'll start coloring in our car with B16 and B14. I'm going to grab the coordinating dies, die cut everything, and then we're going to add some stamped sentiments for our scene cards. Now, for the card background, I had a really difficult time making the sentiments from that stamp set work with my design. And I'm going to show you a very easy way to customize your stamp. I know that it may seem kind of scary, but don't be afraid to cut apart your sentiment. You can always put it back together. So on the card on the right, the bus and truck and car card, I am going to take my sentiment and I'm going to cut it apart to make it work with my particular scene. And I end up really, really loving this. I'm going to need to grab my MISTI and set it up, and I'm going to show you how I cut it apart to make this work with my card design. I've laid out all the components for both of my cards. For Loads of Love, there's plenty of room for that sentiment. I wanted to use Sending Smiles Across the Miles for the card on the right, and I couldn't find the perfect spot to make that fit. I rearranged the vehicles several times. I tried lots of different things, and ultimately I liked the vehicle placement this way the best. Leaving the vehicles in place, even though I haven't adhered them yet, I'm going to take my Sending Smiles Across the Miles sentiment and some nice sharp scissors, and starting at the bottom, I'm going to simply cut apart each line of text. Some nice sharp scissors. These Tim Holtz scissors work fantastic for that. Trying to figure out if I should cut the rest of it apart or not. Ultimately, I decided to, and I'm glad I did. But I like to kind of show you my thought process as I was working on this. Yep. Nope. Let's stick with our original idea. Now, if you want to use the sentiment exactly like it comes, you can always just piece it back together in your MISTI and stamp it just like it came in the stamp set. So you're not really losing anything. It'll take maybe a little bit more work to piece it all back together, but it does allow you to stamp this in lots of different configurations. So let's say you have a landscape style card or slimline card and you want each of these texts to be in a long strip. You could also set this up in a long strip really easily now that it's cut apart. I'm going to position the words where I want them to go, and I'm starting here, and I'm going to gently bend each word so it follows the curved line. You can see how I just lightly pick up the edge and twist it a tiny bit. I'm going to ink all of this up with VersaFine Onyx Black ink. Stamp that right on my card background. We're going to clean these up, put these back on our sheet, our storage sheet. And I'm going to take the rest of my text across the phrase, and we're going to curve that right in front of the word miles. I'm going to figure out where I want it to go, place it in my MISTI, and then gently curve the edges. We'll ink it up with the black ink and stamp that there, and there is our perfect sentiment. A little customization to make it perfectly fit our card design. Then this one's easy. We're just going to straight stamp Loads of Love right there in the bottom right corner of the design. Once I have my greetings in place, we can go ahead and put both of these cards together. Using my favorite foam adhesive, I am going to be popping up all of the vehicles. I glued the traffic light directly to the card background because of that really thin stand that it's on. Foam adhesive squares from Scrapbook Adhesives are my absolute favorite, and they're going to give some great dimension to everything else on our card design. Once I had my vehicles in place, I added some crystal lacquer to the windows, and I'm going to allow that to completely dry. While I absolutely love this card background, I did feel like it was missing a little something and needed some sort of an embellishment. So I'm going to let it sit for a minute while I put together the other card, and I can come back to it and I'm going to show you what I ended up adding. I did go ahead and add some little tufts of grass with my YG17 marker before setting it aside for a little bit, and I think the grass is a really fun touch. This is always one of my favorite ways to just add a little more detail. I've got my white top fold card base from Simon Says Stamp. I always use Simon Says Stamp card bases in top fold, side fold, slimline, or mini slimline. We're going to adhere our construction trucks to our card. Very, very similar to before. I have my little dirt that this truck is moving. And again, I felt like the background needs a little something. For this one, I'm going to take my E57 marker, excuse me, and add some little dots that match the dirt that we colored with our Copic markers. And I think it really adds to the overall look and feel of the design. I'm just going to take the tip of my marker and kind of add little dots all over. We'll add this card to a white top fold card base and also fill in the windows with crystal lacquer. I'm going to take some little hearts. I'm going to add one little red heart to the Loads of Love on the Construction Trucks card. I always have to have a heart. Well, I shouldn't say always, but a lot of times. And I like that little pop of red. And then I decided, let's put one on our bus and let's add some little rainbows of hearts on the roads. I thought about putting it on the truck door and I didn't really like that. So I am going to add them on the roads kind of next to the sentiments, and I ended up liking that a lot. I also forgot to mention that I added crystal lacquer to the traffic light, which I think adds a nice little bit of embellishment and dimension to our traffic lights. I'm going to use a rainbow of different hearts. I thought about having the hearts come out of the truck. I think they blended into the background too much, but on the road they show up great. So that is what we're going to end up doing. For our stenciled vehicle backgrounds, I am going to be using the new Hello script die, as well as a sentiment from the previously released Celebration Scripts stamp set. Then we're going to take the Vroom and Beep sentiments from the vehicle, the Across the Miles stamp set, and I am going to stamp those phrases with colorful ink all over the background to finish off the backgrounds nicely. So for the cars background, I used both Vroom and Beep. For the construction trucks, I'm just going to use Vroom. I think this fills in a lot of the white areas and finishes off the look of the custom background pattern paper that we're creating very, very nicely. I think I'm using the Earl ink for this one. Both of these backgrounds are also trimmed down to 4 by 5 1/4, leaving us a nice white border all the way around. From the Hello die, I die cut 6 hellos from black cardstock. I'm stacking 3 together to give a little bit more dimension. And then we're going to stamp and emboss It's Your Special Day from the Celebration Scripts stamp set on black licorice cardstock with clear embossing ink and heat emboss with white embossing powder. The sentiments are going to be the final piece of our stenciled vehicle backgrounds. I'm using some tweezers to hold on to the sentiment while I build the 3 layers, and then I'm putting a couple of acrylic blocks on top to help hold them flat while the glue dries. This is a super quick and easy way to get a dimensional die cut sentiment. This hello, as I mentioned a little earlier in the video, is one of my favorite pieces of this of the release, because I think it's just the perfect size. The font is amazing, and it is going to be a fantastic addition to your craft stash. I'll use the leftover from my black cardstock to stamp and emboss my sentiments. I'm using my favorite sentiment labels dies to die cut the sentiments into strips and pop them up with foam adhesive. We're going to glue the hello directly to the background, add our sentiment strip, and of course, finish the end of each greeting with a small red heart embellishment to perfectly finish off our card. You can always add crystal lacquer to some of the elements on the windows or the centers of the wheels, or glossy accents, either one, or the traffic lights, anything like that. Now, I forgot to trim down my background, so I did quickly do that here. I think I originally thought I might leave it A2 sized and then decided to go ahead and trim it down. As I mentioned a little earlier in the video, while I didn't create coordinating stenciled envelopes, those would be very easy to do at this point if you wanted to have a perfectly coordinating set. Look how cute, and the black sentiment really pops off of the busy background. Just taking a little bit off each side so that my background ends up measuring 4 by 5 1/4. A little liquid glue on the back of my die cut hello. Our sentiment strip, and of course another little heart right at the end of the O in hello to finish it off. I'm going to give you a look at all 4 finished cards together now. 2 with stamped, colored, and die cut images, 2 with just stenciled backgrounds, but all 4 have some sort of layering stencil. The layering stencils from this release, as always from Pretty Pink Posh, are just amazing. Definitely make sure to check out all of Pretty Pink Posh's layering stencils for all kinds of great card making. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for these easy boy cards featuring Pretty Pink Posh June 2022 release products. The supplies I use to create my cards are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here is another video featuring Pretty Pink Posh June release products that you might be interested in. I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to my Patreon members. If you would like to become a member of Patreon, please click the link in the description below. We would love to have you over there as part of our community. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel, hit that like button, and don't forget to click the notification bell to always be notified when I have a new card making video. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.